What is going on, everyone? Soliday Holiday here, and today we are continuing our Zero to Hero Keystone Master challenge as a Retribution Paladin. In the beginning of this challenge, I started with a new character and I'm going to be pugging my way to Keystone Master. This is going to be our 5th episode for this challenge, and boy did we get a lot accomplished. If you have not watched prior episodes, the rules for this challenge are pretty simple. I will not be trading any gold or anything else from other characters. I have removed this character from my Raider.io profile, so that way no one can see my mains rating or anything like that. And I will have no help from friends or guildmates or anything like that for this challenge. At the beginning of this challenge, we had a mythic rating of 1836 and an item level of 464. So as always, we're going to start out with our weekly vault. From our vault, we had the options of a porcelain crab trinket with an item level of 476. This was a 13 item level upgrade for us. We also had the option of an unwinding Eon girdle with an item level of 476, and this was also a 13 item level upgrade. This was a difficult choice. Both pieces of gear were a 13 item level upgrade, and this was a pretty good trinket. Also, both items were a hero piece of gear and would replace a champion level gear. What I ended up doing is I decided to take the waste due to the fact that we would lose a lot of versatility if we replaced our trinket, and it's kind of the same upgrade anyway. This put us at an item level of 465, and we also got a plus 17 Atal'Dazar from the vault. So while I was equipping the waist, I actually saw that we no longer had our 4 set, so I grabbed a pair of pants that we attempted to replace last episode. I put those pants back on, and that brought us back to our 4 set. The pants that we attempted to replace them with had better stats, but they were the same item level, so it wasn't that huge of a deal. We then got into a plus 17 Blackrock hold. In this dungeon, we actually had 2 other Paladin DPSs. This wasn't as awesome as our 5-man Paladin group from episode 2, but it was still pretty fun and funny. We got to see some hammers raining down on some mobs and some bosses again this episode, and I think looking back, it will always bring a smile to my face. Also, last episode, we were dealing with a little bit of an issue regarding an error that was popping up on our screen. And yeah, I didn't do anything to fix this. It's 100% my bad. I 100% honestly meant to sit down and figure out what was going on, but then, I started playing, I started having fun, and I completely forgot about the error. It's honestly sad because by the end of recording this episode, clearing the error just became a second nature. But I will make this promise, as I will do everything in my power to fix this error before the next one, if there is one. But enough of that, back to the actual gameplay. Towards the end of the boss, I got the Soul of Echo's ability placed on me, and your boy messed up. For some reason, I decided to turn around and run back into the pools that were left behind and ended up getting feared. After being feared, we were super close to dying, but thankfully I was able to pop the bubble and I didn't die. But wowzas, was it a close one. Just some foreshadowing for the rest of this episode, we have a lot of close ones. Moving on, one of the paladins got deleted on the stairwell with the spiders, and I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's this dungeon, the concentration on the ground or what, but sometimes it is super hard to see the impact area of the shockwave from the champions. I really just had to rely on deadly moss bobs to scream at me when this ability was going off and run away to make sure I didn't get hit by it. A little side note for this dungeon is look at all these hammers hitting this boss. This will always crack me up. I think it looks awesome. I did end up getting the laser beam on me twice in a row during the second boss, so my DPS was pretty horrid. But hey, when it comes down to it, there's only the entire internet that could judge me for my horrible gameplay, right? So it's no big deal. After the second boss, we moved it on to trash, and one of the paladins ended up actually getting to 800k DPS. It was absolutely insane. Later in this episode, we pushed some pretty good numbers, but this was still baffling to me. As we were moving along, the last 2 ads before the big staircase absolutely destroyed my group's hopes and dreams. I have no idea why they were able to do this. They were stunned for most of the fight, so they weren't able to use their big buff ability. Once they came out of their stun, they just went on an absolute rampage on the group. After the wipe, we came back and we were able to knock him out easily though. We were able to very slowly, and I do mean very, very, very slowly, go up the stairs to the 3rd boss. I think it took 3 minutes to make it to the 3rd boss from the start of the stairs. On the 3rd boss, I did get annihilated by a hateful gaze. I had my blessing of protection up, but if you guys know me at this point, I apparently have an inability to use this ability, so it shouldn't be a surprise that I didn't use my defensives. Also, one thing, a lot of people left a lot of awesome and good tips, and I seriously greatly appreciate you. That being said, I have heard and read all of your tips, but the first part of this episode was recorded before that video was even published. So if I still suck, you know why. I promise I do a lot better later in the episode, but just wanted to kind of explain that. We were able to kill the last boss, and we ended up 2-chesting the dungeon. This added 59 to our rating, which put us at an overall rating of 1859. So sadly, after this, we weren't able to play anymore for the weekly reset. So a couple of days later, we logged in for another week. One of the upsides of this is we got to log in and we got to open up another vault. We had the option to take a 476 helmet. This was the same item level that we already had, but it was a hero level item, so we could upgrade it further in the future. We took the helmet to the revival catalyst so that we could turn it into a piece of tier gear. After this, we went ham on some dungeons. So we didn't get to fill in the dungeons that we hadn't completed on the other affix, but for the rest of this episode, we will be dealing with Tyrannical, Incorporeal, and Spiteful. And good gosh, was this a rough one. So the first one we got into was a plus 12 Throne of Tides. I know it's a low level dungeon, but it had been a minute since I played, so I wanted to play a quick easy one to get back into the swing of things. And well, that is what I thought at the very least. Throughout this dungeon, the tank wasn't really keeping aggro the best. I don't know if this was an issue with me not allowing him to get aggro before attacking or what it was, but it was a little rough. On the plus side of this is I definitely got to use my defenses and got some practice in using them. I did notice that whenever I use my defensives, I always use both of my low cooldown defensives at the same time instead of spacing them out. In the future, I'm going to try to space those out further so that way I'm not just wasting both of them at the same time. We started out this dungeon pretty smoothly until we got to Commander Uthok. While fighting the boss, I actually got knocked back into the ads that were still in the room. I wasn't paying the best attention here and I completely forgot about them, and it ended up killing me and the healer. Thankfully, after we both died, the ads reset and the tank and the other DPSs were able to kill the boss so that way we could move on. We started the last boss with 15 deaths and 11 minutes to complete the dungeon. Now I'll tell you what, we kept wiping on this boss. Most of it was due to the fact that no one was killing the ads fast enough and no one was interrupting the ink blast ability. So we ended up wiping actually twice before we were able to time the dungeon. This added a whopping 9 to our mythic rating, and that put us at 1904 mythic rating overall. After this, I upgraded our wrist to 457, our weapon to 480, and our neck to 467. This put us at a 466 item level overall. We then got into a group for our plus 17 Atal'Dazar. While we were waiting, I bought more corrupting potions, and I also bought 20 grand banquets of the Kaluak. So the start of this dungeon was a little strange. Normally people run to the right and run straight to Razan, right? The tank in this one went left instead of right. I don't think I've ever actually seen this area of the dungeon before, so it was a little weird for me. On the fight with Razan, one of the shamans got pursuit put on them and got gobbled up super quick. I tried to put blessing on him, but I didn't get it off in time. Editing me, looking back at this now, and how many times I've said blessing and protection and how I haven't used it appropriately, I'm going to change where this ability is located so that way I can actually try to use this when I'm supposed to. At this point, I'm tired of saying it, so I'm actually going to try to fix it so that way I don't have to freaking say this anymore. So on the pursuit directly after that one, the other shaman actually ended up dying. This is one of the few times in this challenge that I've actually missed my warlock. Most of the time whenever we are on Razan, I throw my portal down so that way everyone has a quick escape and they can get away from the boss. And everyone was struggling with the pursuit ability in this dungeon. As we killed Razan, the tank ended up dying directly after Razan was dead. Looking back at the footage now and looking at it now, I'm still not even sure 100% what he actually died to. After the tank was rezzed, we then went right to head up to the priestess. And on a very personal level, I much prefer to head left towards Volkal instead of heading up to the priestess. Does anybody know, is there a benefit to actually heading towards the priestess first instead of heading to Volkal? In my experience, we always wipe heading towards priestess. And I feel like we only wipe sometimes heading to Volkal, and I feel like it's a little bit easier. And boy, was my feeling right. On the group up the stairs, somehow extra mobs actually got pulled, so I ended up dying. The tank was still up, so I ran back as quick as I could to try to help out and almost immediately died again. The group did end up fully wiping and we had to reset. After we reset, on the next pull, we almost wiped again due to the affix destabilizing us, but luckily we were able to pull it out and move on. After we moved up the stairs, I then sadly died from a shade from the Spiteful affix right before the priestess. After getting rezzed, we started the priestess fight. So the tank pulled the priestess down off the platform, so it was super far away from where the ad spawned. I think the tank in this group was a newer tank because they kept taking the boss further and further away from the platform. This ended up being a super long fight, and after 3.5 freaking minutes, we finally killed the boss. We moved on from the fight with 14 minutes left and 2 bosses to take down. Now, I'll tell you what, if you thought the priestess fight was a rough one, I know you guys didn't see much of it, but 3.5 minutes is a long time, right? But if you thought the priestess fight was a rough one, Volkal was even worse. Our first wipe was before we were even able to take down the totems. After the reset, we then had one person that was just deciding to DPS down the totems as fast as possible without any regards to the other totems. So we ended up killing the totems not once, not twice, but 3 freaking times before we finally had to freaking stop and reset. It was a huge pain in the butt. It was actually insane. At one point, the DPS killed the totem when the other 2 totems were above 50%. It was nuts. I don't know what was going on with the DPS, but after the reset, I was trying to explain the fight and they just kept saying one person died at the same time. It was extremely infuriating. At this point, we were most definitely not timing this dungeon, but at least wanted to try to complete it and hopefully get a piece of gear from the chest. Thankfully, after a reset, we were able to kill the totems at the same time and take down Full Call. We then continued on to Yasma. After one wipe, we tried again. The positioning of this fight was a little rough and I felt like I was running around like crazy to try to avoid the spiders. At one point, all the DPS ran away from the tank and the tank decided to come with us. Yasma then hit all the souls and it caused a wipe. After this, we were actually able to kill Yasma and complete the dungeon. Sadly, it didn't add to our rating or anything, but hey, at least we completed the dungeon, right? After this dungeon, I then put a gem into my neck socket so that way you guys would stop making fun of me in the comments. I'm really just playing. I do greatly appreciate all your guys' tips. I don't even know how long we actually applied for groups, but we didn't get into anything, and so we started our own group. We ended up getting a group together in like 5 freaking seconds for our Blackrock hold 16. On our first poll, we got to do some pretty good DPS, and we were close to hitting 400k DPS, so I was feeling pretty confident and good about this dungeon. We ended up making it to the first boss with only 1 death. I wish I had more to say about the rest of this dungeon, but this group was super solid, and we killed the first boss and the second boss super easily. We then had a huge pull in the hallway with the tricksters, and we almost hit 600k freaking DPS, which was awesome. I was super stoked. On the huge pull, the Death Knight ended up actually dying to a Spiteful Shade, so I feel you, man. I hate this freaking affix. We continued on to the next trash, and we were still staying at like 400k DPS, and I was honestly feeling huge. I know I've said it before in other videos, but honestly, I was really feeling good about the Paladin. Other than not being able to use my Blessing of Protection ever, I feel like I've been doing a really good job with the rotation and was feeling super confident. And on a better point, I was having a blast. I was pumping some huge numbers for most of the time, and as I'm sure you know, more DPS means more fun, right? The tank ended up dying to Hateful Gaze at the exact same time as the boss died, which was pretty funny to me. I don't know what was up with everybody dying as soon as the boss died on this episode, but it felt like it happened a lot. We then moved on to the trash before the last boss, and especially as a paladin, it can be extremely hard to see their AoE stun. When concentration is on the ground, it mixes with the AoE zone, so that way it can be extremely difficult to decipher where exactly it is. We were then able to kill the last boss, and we ended up 3-chesting this dungeon, and it added a whopping 3 to our rating, which put us at 1907. We did end up getting a plus 18 Throne of the Tides from the chest. So from the chest, the tank actually got a pair of 463 item level Raven Crest Bone Crush Gauntlets. Try to say that 5 times fast, right? This was a 13 item level upgrade for us, and this saint of a man or a woman gave them to us. This was a huge freaking upgrade for us and put us at an overall item level of 467. We then left the group, and once we got back to Valdrekin, we upgraded our weapon to 483. We then got a group together for our plus 18 Throne of Tides. On the first poll, we did some pretty good DPS, but the Demon Hunter made us look like a chump. As we were continuing through, we actually wiped on the first scavenger because no one, myself included, was doing anything about the affix. I'm not gonna lie, I was so focused on trying to catch up to the Demon Hunter, I just completely forgot the affix was a thing. In the hallway, just after the water elevator, me and the Demon Hunter actually ended up both hitting over 600k DPS, but he still sadly beat us, but God, was it close. So I will say, as at this point in the video, I have read your comments and I have attempted to implement your guys' tips. I personally think it shows. I've been trying to stay a little bit further away from the mobs and the bosses and all that fun stuff. Plus my DPS has gone through the roof. So I just want to say thank you to you all. Everyone that left a comment trying to help, I seriously greatly appreciate you. We then made it to the Nazjar fight, and good gosh, this felt hectic as heck. I almost died to the electrical shockwave ability, and then almost died again when the ads spawned directly after. I don't know if it was just me or what, but I felt like there was a crazy amount of AoE pools that spawned during the ad phase. I felt like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But thankfully we were able to move on to Commander Uthok. And honestly, I thought the Nazjar fight was hectic. This one was even more so. Thankfully, the tank decided to kill the entire room before we killed the first boss, so we didn't have to worry about pulling any ads while fighting this boss, which I seem to do every time. The healer died on the first shockwave and we were able to battle res them. And I will say is that if the group does not know this fight, it can be super rough, but once you learn that you have to position the boss between you and the ads, it makes this fight a whole lot easier to deal with. As we were moving along, I almost died due to being trapped by the pools, but thankfully we were able to live with like 5% health left. After Uthok went down, we were able to move on to the third boss. And other than the healer dying to the pull mechanic, we had zero issue getting to that boss. On the last boss, both of the other DPS ended up dying, and sadly my battle res was on cooldown. After they died, we continued and tried to knock out the boss, and we got it to 12% before we wiped. We honestly just didn't have enough interrupts and assistance with the affixes, so we had to run it back. We were then able to time this dungeon. This added 78 to our total rating, which put us at a 1985. We did get a hero level neck, which was the Iron Shell Pendant. This was the same item level, but we would be able to upgrade it further than the one we had. We then moved on to a plus 18 Atal'Dazar. Me being the good old derp that I am, I forgot to record the Razan fight, but I don't think I've ever actually wiped on this boss, so you'll just have to trust me that we completed it. We then moved on to the next trash, and sadly, we went to the right towards the priestess again. We ended up wiping on the same exact pull as last time, which was trash on the stairs. The tank did pull the mobs off the stairs and into the open area, which was a good idea. I ended up dying to a big ol' AoE ability. This was 100% my fault, and I should have done better, but I just got one shot by it. And I'll tell you what, I freaking hate Spiteful. I died to the same exact Spiteful shade in the same exact freaking area as last time. After the priestess fight, we went down the stairs and fought the trash that was right after that. On this pull, we almost died due to the fire that comes from the wall because of my A+ positioning, right? Thankfully, we didn't die and we were able to move on. And as we were approaching the last mobs before the Volkal fight, the rogue freaking sapped the very left mob so that way we could just sneak in. It was awesome. I've never seen anything like this before. I was shook, especially after last episode where the rogue was using the shroud ability to allow us to pass by groups of mobs with no issue. I'm very highly considering bringing a rogue to every dungeon I can. Their utility and what they allow us to do is awesome, and I may consider making my own rogue sometime soon. After we snuck past that group, we were then able to kill Volkal with just a single death on our part. On Yasma, the tank was doing an awesome job of rotating and moving the boss. We did have the Soul Rend go off at the same time that we were hit by destabilization from the affix, and we almost wiped due to not being able to kill the souls because we were destabilized, right? Thankfully, we were able to kill the souls, and the only person that died was the rogue, but we were able to continue on and kill Yasma, completing the dungeon. And you'll never freaking believe it. We finally did it. We finally completed our goal as Keystone Master. And also, we got some pretty good gloves to top it off. I know I kind of have mentioned going to Keystone Hero in prior episodes in this challenge. That was never really the plan and was a little bit of a slip of the tongue. I will say that if you guys want to see me go to Keystone Hero, I'd be more than happy to. I'm not doing this part to fish for likes or anything like that. I just want to see if people actually want to see more. So if we get 10 comments saying keep going or 30 likes on this video, I will keep pushing to Mythic Hero. If not, then I plan on starting a new series and more to come on that later. I do want to say thank you so much to everyone that has watched these videos and supported this channel. I have been truly shocked by how much feedback I've gotten and how awesome you guys have been. I can't wait for what is to come with this channel, and I'm extremely excited for the future. That being said, that this is the end of this episode and honestly the end of this challenge unless you guys want more. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you.